Hi, this is John Wren. It's a couple of minutes before 10 o'clock, so we're not quite on the air yet, but this is a different kind of show. It's very casual, informal. Try to answer your questions. You can tweet questions to us on Twitter at Idea Cafe. Those come up, and I'll try to answer them today. Get Twitter going. So if you want to be on the show with me on the virtual roundtable next week, call me, 303-861-1447. Wait till the show's over. Be the best time to call. Watch today. But once you've taken a look at the show, if you'd like to be on with me, give me a call, and I will consider that. Leave a complete message, who you are, why you want to be on the show, and I'll get back to you if it sounds like that would be a good fit. So, we 10 o'clock yet? Not quite. We got about a minute more. And it's been beautiful here in Denver, and we did this little bit of a stumbling start right before the show that probably will be edited out. And what comes up next is just about as casual. We don't have fancy graphics. Because we think this establishes a better connection between me and you who are watching now. If you're the kind of person that I'm imagining we can be helpful to. And it's 10 o'clock, so we'll get started. Hi, this is John Wren. This is the Startup Show. We're here each Friday morning, 10 a.m. to talk about startups. So if you're starting a new career, if you're starting a new project or new campaign or a new business, and who isn't these days? But if you're starting something new, this is the right place to be. We're here each Friday morning, 10 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, around the world, through YouTube, through Google Hangouts, and it's on johnwren.com. There's a link there, johnwren.com. And it's not 10 a.m., it's a half-hour show. If you're not in that time slot, you're not watching it live, but go to johnwren.com. You can see the recording of the previous week's show. And weeks before that, if you want. You can also go on YouTube. We have a station there that you may be able to track down. If you click watch on YouTube, you'll see it there. And then subscribe. And we're using YouTube more and more. YouTube, Google Hangouts, these are wonderful tools. And we appreciate Alphabet making them available to us. And today we're going to be talking about the politics of startup and two aspects. There's really going to be sort of two halves of the show. One is we're going to talk a little bit about should you be involved in politics at all? If you are in business, especially if you're starting a new business, is it to your advantage to be involved, or does that lose half your customer base? If you don't agree with what everybody says, will everybody do business with you? So we're going to talk about politics of startup from that aspect. And we're also going to talk about the Colorado caucus. And in general, how can you be involved no matter where you are in the United States? If you're on the other side of the world, you might want to take everything I say today with a little bit of a grain of salt. It may or may not be the right way to do in other countries. But as far as the United States, I have some definite experience and ideas and understanding about that, and I'll be sharing those with you. We're sponsored by the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc. It's a Colorado nonprofit corporation, and it's pretty much just me at this time, but we're intending for that to change over the next bit of time, and that it becomes something that will not require my continued presence. We're trying to bring things up that I've been doing for almost 20 years now and bring it up to a level where it can carry on without me. We've done a startup workshop for a long time here in Denver that people seem to have found very, very helpful. And we do other activities that you can learn about. But in each Friday afternoon after this broadcast, I head downtown, a block from the Capitol. 2 o'clock, I'll be at Panera Bread Cafe, and we're there each Friday, 2 p.m. to 3:30 p.m. for the Idea Cafe Startup Praxis. What's a praxis? Well, if you're not sure, come. We'll tell you at the meeting. So That's this afternoon, 2 p.m., or any Friday afternoon at 2 p.m. At least that's our intention at this point. So let's get started. Let's talk about, should you be involved in politics? Well, looking at it first from the point of view of being an American citizen, Dwight Eisenhower said, in our system of government, you remember President Dwight Eisenhower, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces, guy that had devoted himself to military service. He came in and studied the political system because he'd sort of been out of it to a certain extent, the military, although there's a political part of the military, but he looked at citizens and business and private versus public, and I think really devoted himself to seeing what America was like at that point. And I think it continues to this day. The truth that he found, as he said, in our system of government, politics has to be the part-time occupation of every citizen. So we all need to do a certain amount. Number one, of course, vote. But even more important, this maybe should be number one, maybe number two is vote. Number one, inform yourself. Read the daily newspaper. Keep up with what's happening, especially in the crazy season. You know, when we get down to 2016 and the parties have picked their candidates, read the newspaper. And I think that's the best way to inform yourself. Bernard Baruch, when asked what he'd suggest that people do to make a lot of money, he said, read the newspaper every day. And I think whether you're making money or just trying to be a good citizen, you need to read the newspaper every day. And I believe in the paper. You know, I use the online versions, and a lot of times I'll read it online and then I'll read the paper edition. And when you read the paper edition, you just see all kinds of things you didn't see when you read it online. And many of you have done the same thing, I'm sure. So read the newspaper, be informed, vote. And then number three, if the time is right for you, involve yourself in one of the major political parties in the nomination process. And that starts at the precinct caucus. And that's been somewhat controversial here in Colorado recently. We've got a page set up, cocaucus.org, where you can see more about this, cocaucus.org. But we have a wonderful system in Colorado, the Colorado Caucus. Every 2 years, it's sort of like a statewide civics lesson. And you're seeing a lot of things in the news about it right now because there are powerful forces that would like to eliminate the caucus. Why? Because it really interferes with them just doing whatever they want. Now, I like it for that reason. You know, these powerful forces may have some good ideas. The powerful forces right now are moving around the state of Colorado. They've announced a 40-city tour, and they are going to I don't know if they're all going to be secret meetings. Yesterday, the first one they did was a secret meeting here in Denver. I don't know if any of the newspapers picked up on that. I called a couple and said, do you know that the media is not being allowed? And incidentally, what I do here, I consider this educational. I consider it media equivalent. This is not a political action committee. We're not raising money to endorse candidates. We're not going to be running ads on issues, but I am going to talk about what I think here now. And right here now, whether it's a small business chamber or anything I'm doing, it's really pretty much just me. We're going to be involving other people. We may need to tidy that up a bit, but for what I'm doing right now, I don't feel like there's any need. This is freedom of speech. This is what, and the right to assembly. I'm marching under those two protected banners. And it's been no money in, no money out. I haven't charged anyone for anything I paid for it, just been out of my pocket here for 20 years. But as I say, that is going to change shortly. And when it does, I will let you know. Or if you want to be part of the change, you know, contact me and let me know you'd like to help with that. We're going to try to form a board of directors. And if you'd like to be on that, let me know. Call 303-861-1447. And maybe we'll have you on the show to talk about it here. But, you know, there's powerful forces would like to eliminate the caucus because it interferes with their plans. And that really is why I like it. It slows things down and it makes sure that it's what we really want to do. And I was part of a group that called Save the Caucus that helped. Actually, I was part of it as it started, and then it became clear it was better for me to be my own voice and be outside the committee. So I kept talking as I always had, but I let the committee do the committee's work, and they did a wonderful job. And I'm sure that Amendment 29 wouldn't have been as soundly beaten, might have passed, who knows, without that committee doing its really terrific work. And I was given far too much credit. Rocky Mountain News wrote an editorial naming me, making it sound like I was the only one that was doing anything, which just was not the truth. The Save the Caucus committee was phenomenal, especially Ruth Prendergast. Without her, who knows what would have happened. But anyway, we still have the caucus, but these powerful forces are back. They're doing this 40-city tour, and I just have a hunch they're going to be talking about our Colorado caucus. You know, maybe I'm cynical, maybe I'm paranoid, but when I saw the announcement of this in the paper last Sunday, that's the first thing I thought about. And I wanted to go to the meeting yesterday and see if it was something they were. No, they didn't want anybody in the meeting except those who got an invitation. I wasn't, you know, of the level that they wanted me in there, that's for sure. So the Colorado caucus, the caucus system in general, it's in 13 or so states still. Used to be everywhere, but they keep beating it back. I believe it is the absolute very best chance for the average ordinary person to have a chance to serve in elected public office, because you get involved, you stay involved, you meet people, and eventually you are in a position that the party wants you to be the representative. It's your time at bat, and you have their support, and you don't have to spend all this money that has to be raised from mostly lobbyists. And I think it's just a much better way for us to have representative government is through that kind of a system. Now, there are checks and balances. Let's say the parties aren't doing their work, you can petition on in Colorado. And I wouldn't ever think about taking that right away from people. If you want to petition on, more power to you, but you're going to be running a campaign that's much different than if you'd been part of one of the major political parties. And people say, well, which party? You know, well, you know what, flip a coin. I don't think it makes any difference, because I'm in a party not to take marching orders. I'm there to have the party act as a megaphone for my point of view. And now, you don't want to get kicked out of the party if you go too far with that. And maybe there is slightly more talk about mercy and justice with the Democrats, although the Republicans look at it too. Maybe with the Republicans, there's a little bit more talk about justice and the economy, but the Democrats talk about that too. And I don't think it really makes all that much difference. So my friend David Fogel says, you know what party you should join? The majority party in your county. And I think that's maybe not too bad of a rule. Now, they also need people in the minority in each, like in Denver right now. You know, they need people to be Republicans, or the Republican Party might just go away in Denver. And so if you're willing to do that kind of work, jump into it. But the person that wants to serve in elected public office in Denver in the next 2 or 3 election cycles, I would say you're probably better off as a Democrat, no matter what point of view you have on the issues. You know, you don't sign a litmus test of any kind. At least that's been the way I've experienced it. And those things are subject to change from time to time. Maybe they're, you know, don't do something that you don't want to. But, you know, if they're signing litmus tests, that's outrageous. You know, that's not the idea of a political party in its true form. It's not like you're joining a church. It's a tool. It's like fire. And it is powerful. So, and it also is a good way to get to know your neighbors better. I've known my neighbors the very, very best when I was a precinct committee person. And it was a lot of fun. But that time in my life has passed, and it's better to pass the torch on to other people. Now, there aren't all that many people receiving the torch right now. So there's a big opportunity to step into a leadership role immediately. Now, the first question was going to be, should you do this? Does this hurt your business? Well, it depends on where you're at in your business cycle. If you just don't have any time at all, you may not want to get actively involved this election cycle. But I can't imagine any business that is so pressing that you couldn't carve out a couple of hours every 2 years to just show up at the caucus. Don't do anything else than that. And then vote on the representatives who you think you'd like to represent you in the nominating assemblies that follow. Everybody's in a big, now with your business, does this detract from your business? I think it's the smartest thing you can do for your business. Now, not if you go in and are a wild idiot, and offend people and alienate them. If that's your personality style, being in the political party may lose you some business because people can really see you. That's why I like it. I think the candidates get put through a more intense process in the caucus. Now, maybe it makes sense for not everybody to have the caucus. But I like what this, why Iowa? Why Iowa? And it's not just about Iowa. These three political scientists wrote a book a couple of years ago, and I just now took the time to read it. And it's a terrific book, and they feel like there ought to be a caucus period and then a national primary for president. And I'd like to see that too. There's been a lot of controversy because the Republicans have said, well, we're not going to do a straw poll. They've done a straw poll ever since it was put in a few cycles ago. It was after we beat Amendment 29. And when we were beating Amendment 29 and talking about the virtue of the caucus, one of the things that came up was that the media hates the caucus because it is such a hard story to cover. And they really don't know what happens statewide. Without the straw poll, people come, they elect representatives, and then the representatives go to vote in the nominating assemblies. But until that vote's taken, you don't really know exactly what's going to happen because there's no binding pledge. And so the straw poll made it easier for the media, but I'll tell you, it pretty much destroyed one of the big benefits of the caucus, and that is this process of electing representatives that we trust, our neighbors who we want to represent us, rather than it being a beauty contest for the candidates. The election is so far away. Why would anybody make up their mind right now who to vote for? And the smartest representatives through this process in the past have, for the most part, run uncommitted. Bill Armstrong, I was 5th Congressional District Chairman. He came to the nominating assembly for the 5th Congressional in Castle Rock, and he made a strong argument that we're much better going as unpledged delegates to the National Nominating Committee because then you really get heard. And I think that's absolutely true. If the votes already chiseled in stone, why do the candidates there even come and talk to you? And that was Bill's experience in that 1976 election cycle. And I wish he would speak out on that now. Oh, maybe he's changed his mind. People sometimes forget what made them successful. To me, that was one of the reasons Bill Armstrong was really successful. It was for open process. Let's hear from the people. And now there are some pretty wild people out there. And people say, well, the caucus is bad because these crazies get into the caucus and control it. Well, only if the neighbors allow it. And I absolutely believe that the caucus is a moderating influence. It's not something that radicalizes. What radicalizes is having just talk radio shows where people come in and vent and yell at each other. The kind of debate that goes on now is disgraceful. It sort of started when Bill Buckley and Gore Vidal did that series of 10 debates back in 1964, I guess it was. And they just treated each other terrible in these debates. And up until that time, that sort of thing just was not seen in the media. Now that's all that you see. And it's not the right way to act. Now, people imagine that's what it's like in a caucus. That has not been my experience, because when you're face to face with someone, it's different than if you're up on a stage with TV cameras on you. Calling into a radio talk show is so anonymous. So neighbors treat each other differently. There's more of a chance to hear each other, to really hear each other. And it's a wonderful process. So there's this 40-city tour. And Dan Ritchie, who's leading it, has agreed with me. I've had conversations with him. He says, I think the caucus is a moderating influence, and maybe he's not allowing this caucus killing to come up as one of their outcomes in this. I hope so. But I got my suspicions. I got my doubts. And maybe they're coming after the caucus again. So do we have any thing coming in on Twitter? No, not yet. But if you want to get your question answered right now about should you be involved in politics or how does the process work, here's how the process works. Just show up. You have to figure out where the meeting's being held. You can do that by calling, your library, your local librarian's a good resource on how do I find my caucus. Newspapers, if you call, they'll know how to call your local political party. I say Google Democrat or Republican and your zip code, and then call whatever comes up. They'll be able to help you. And I'm sure there's other ways too I'm not thinking of right now, but find out where the meeting is, get there, go early, stay late, take some cookies. People always like that. And read the newspaper. So if you'll do those two things, and it's not going to take you all that much time, you'll have started your political career. Now, when time is available to you, and this may not be true if you've got young kids, very young kids. I mean, the older kids, bring them. It's like the best thing to do with kids. My kids, I would imagine, still remember the precinct caucuses we'd have in our homes. And it was a wonderful neighborhood. The neighbors knew each other, and I think partly is because of this precinct caucus system. We had the one party with us, the other party met, and we'd get together each month for what we called alarm clock parties. And I'm thinking of making this a small business chamber project across the state of Colorado. Is let's every neighborhood have an alarm clock party. An old guy, Leonard Rowe, was the spark plug, and they call him an alarm clock party. Every Sunday, I think 6 o'clock, 5:30 or 6, neighbors would get together for exactly 1 hour, and you'd bring whatever it is you wanted to eat as hors d'oeuvres for yourself and enough for a couple of other people. So there was always plenty of food. Bring what you wanted to drink with you. And so the host just had to open up their home, and it rotated from home to home to home. And so a couple of months, I think we skipped, but 10 months out of the year, there'd be one of these on the last Sunday of the month. And they called it an alarm clock party because Leonard would set an alarm clock that would go off at exactly the magic hour. 1 hour, and the alarm clock went off. And Leonard would say, who's doing it next time? Somebody'd raise their hand. And then you had to leave. There was no option. You had to leave, because what had happened before in the early days of doing this, Leonard told me, is that they would have them, people would show up, and then they'd linger on and on and on. And the host is irritated. Everybody's irritated because, and so the next one would come up, and people would think, oh my gosh, that thing took, like, we were up till midnight. We're not going to go this time. So if it's 1 hour, it's just kind of an opportunity to pop in, say hi to your neighbors. And if every neighborhood in Colorado would be doing that, the caucuses would vastly improve. Now, you come together each month not to talk about politics, talk to your neighbors about what they're doing. But then you know each other, the caucus goes better. And our neighborhoods are falling apart. One of the reasons I got involved with small groups some 20 years ago is I read the book Bowling Alone by Robert Putnam, and he documented the decline of what he calls social capital. That's where people know their next door neighbor. Now, I'm a major hypocrite in this area right now with myself. I've moved. I don't know my neighbors very well, but I'm going to try to at least find out where my caucus is. And who knows, maybe start an alarm clock party. So we got just a few minutes left. What can I share with you that would be most helpful? Let's do this. is I want to share the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc. and why we're doing these things. And our Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc. startup method. Method is something that's comprised of practices. And, the practices that our method is comprised of is, first of all, your imagination, opening up your mind to other alternatives. And that we have a free group for each one of these. Groups are strictly optional. Some people find them helpful, some people don't. I'm also available to meet with people one-on-one, and we hope to develop a core of volunteers that can meet with people. But we'll be centering everything around these 4 practices. One is the practice of imagination. And the small group that we have to help you with that is the Idea Cafe Startup Praxis. I have a model group each Friday afternoon at 2 o'clock, 2 to 3:30 at Panera Bread, 13th and Grant, just a block from the Capitol. Love to have you just pop in. If you like it and you want to start a new group, we'd love to help you do that, helping you get the word out about what you're doing, sharing our experience with you a little bit. Or you may start your own group. You may already have a group that helps you be more creative, and that's fine. If that's your imagination is taken care of, no problem. The other is logic and decision-making, thinking about things in a logical way. And there's all kinds of things you can take advantage of, books in that area. The small group that we have that I think really helps with that, and it's fun. It's, I think, the most fun group that we have is our Socrates Cafe, based on what Chris Phillips suggested in his book called Socrates Cafe. I'd encourage you to pick up the book and read it, but that's not a requirement to come to a meeting. It's a very simple format. We just pick a topic, talk about it, ask each other questions, and try to help. I believe that's improved my logical thinking ability. Mike would disagree. He thinks I'm not logical enough, and he's probably right. I may need to read another book. But reading books, going to group meetings, and meeting with people one-on-one to talk about it is the way to improve our skills in these practices. So imagination, logical thinking, adult self-directed learning. Adults learn best by being a teacher. And, the colleges are under such pressure that they have all kinds of classes for adult learners now, but they tend to be traditional learning. There's a classroom situation, there's lectures. It's hard to find the right class on the right topic. Well, Ben Franklin had the right idea. It's get together with a group of what he called your more ingenious colleagues and meet once a week and help each other learn better. He had a format for that we have in a group. It's called a Franklin Circle. And if you want to know more about that, just Google Franklin Circle. Pretty much everything that I know about starting one is right there, and just get started. Or if you'd like to join one of the groups that I'm starting kind of the last one I'll ever do right now. If you'd like to be part of that, then give me a call. Number I give at the end of the show. And let's see, the 4th practice I'm forgetting. What is the 4th practice? You know what? We're out of time anyway. We're going to talk about the 4th practice next week. And, kind of the purpose of this show is to try to give you a place to go when you're stuck. I say that Friday afternoon is a good time for the Idea Cafe Startup Praxis because it's for people who just aren't sure what they're going to do Monday morning. So if that's you and you're in Denver, join us this afternoon. Or if that's you and you're not in Denver, think about starting a meeting. I'll help you if you'll ask me. And what I know is if you can get a group of people together and it's a group structured in a way that it doesn't just turn into a bitch session about what's wrong with the world, but it becomes, if a problem is brought up, now how can we make that better? That you leave the group meeting feeling better, you've gotten some understanding, information from the people that are there, and your life just goes better. Now, if you're not sure what you're going to do Monday morning and you're just like, it's meeting after meeting after meeting, take a look at those meetings. Are they really helping you? I'd say cut them back and let's try something else. A lot of the meetings that are out there, Robert Putnam wrote this book, Bowling Alone, participation was declining. Well, I'd say participation is pretty high right now, but what's being offered in a lot of cases is not really doing anything but building a dependency on the group, and it's very negative, and or it's, some of them are just the excuses for a drinking party. When you get right down to it, these networking groups that, there's a lot of booze and food, but and people may leave with business cards, but you can't remember talking to the person. And is it really paying off? Or if it's Friday and you're not sure what you're going to do Monday morning, right now, I'd say what you're doing isn't working. Let's try something else. And the fourth practice is recovery. I mean, if these booze parties are a problem, AA.org, Alcoholics Anonymous, give them a quick look on get a local meeting. They've got local phone numbers you can call. Or you may have some other profound problem, but deal with it. Recovery, getting back up on your feet. It's really maybe should be the number one practice, because for some people that aren't sure what they're going to do Monday morning, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. The rest of your life starts right now. So do what you need to do. And if you're back up on your feet, you're ready to go, you're all dressed up but not sure where to go, join us at the Idea Cafe Startup Praxis this afternoon, 2 o'clock, Panera Bread Cafe, 13th and Grant. And if you have any questions about any of this, if you've got questions you want answered on the air, or me personally, I'd be glad to get together with you. Or if you'd like to be on the show with me next week, give us a call, 303-861-1447. That's 303-861-1447. This is here each Monday morning at 10 o'clock. This is the Startup Show, sponsored by the Small Business Chamber of Commerce, Inc. We cooperate with local chambers to try to help them provide more real help to startups and very small businesses. So we're out of time. Thank you for watching. Remember this, and forward this on. You may have a friend that might really find it helpful, so let them know about it. But whatever your situation right now, just remember this life is very short, so let's go get started.